Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back after there was 4 weeks. We didn't have 3 weeks, whatever. We didn't have a class. Anyway, Monday night, so we're going to learn Parsha Vayigash. The stories we mentioned, every aspect in Torah is a lesson. In life, even the stories of Torah, we need to learn a lesson. There's a very interesting question, which is a general question, not only pertaining to this week's Parsha, but a general question. Okay, Yosef was sold into slavery. He was away from his father for 22 years. Okay, so we understand that when Yosef was a slave in Egypt, and then when he ended up getting into jail, he didn't have the ability to tell his father he's still alive. But now, 9 years, because when Yosef became the king, the 7 years of plenty started, plus 2 years of hunger. So it was 9 years already that Yosef was in a position as a king to do whatever he wanted. So the question is, why didn't Yosef inform his father 9 years earlier than he did that he's alive? He knew that his father was suffering. He knew that because every time the brothers came, he said to them, how is he doing? Okay, so obviously Yosef knew there's an issue, and he knew that he wasn't there and how close his father was to him. Why didn't Yosef tell his father, send a messenger, say, I want you to know I'm alive? Why didn't he do it? So the answer is, and here you see the greatness of tzaddikim. You see actually the greatness of a tzaddik. When Yosef was thrown into the pit, okay, now you have to keep in mind, there are 12 shvatim. Binyamin didn't go. And Reuven, as we know, wasn't there by the sale because either he went to serve his father, or he was doing tshuva, like it says in Parsha Vayigash. So there are 10 brothers, including Yosef, involved in the sale of Yosef. Now, obviously, Yosef is not going to be part of the sale. He's being sold. I mean, he wasn't doing it. Okay, it was against his will. So there were 9 of the brothers selling Yosef as a slave into slavery in 2 parshas ago in Vayigash. The brothers were afraid that somebody is going to spill the beans. One of the brothers is going to do tshuva, and when he does tshuva, he's going to tell Yaakov what really happened. And the brothers didn't want that because then Yaakov would curse them or whatever, and they didn't want it. So what they did was they made a minyan, and this is what the Medrash says. They made a minyan, and the 10th one was Hashem himself. And they made a ban that whoever tells Yaakov that Yosef is alive and just sold into slavery, he will be what's called cherem. He'll be excommunicated until all of them want to dissolve the vow that they made, the group of 10, and then they would be able to tell the father. Now, Yosef, even though he wasn't part of the 10, because there were 9 brothers in Hashem, but he was present in the pit when they made that vow. That means he was halachically included in the vow, because the 10 brothers and 9 in Hashem said, whoever is going to tell Yaakov that Yosef is sold as a slave or he's still alive will be banned. And Yosef therefore was part of the ban, even though he didn't make the ban, but he was part of the ban. Therefore, halachically, Yosef wasn't allowed to tell his father that he's alive. Why not? Because Yosef saw that Hashem didn't want Yaakov to know yet. Because if Hashem wanted Yaakov to know that Yosef was alive, he would tell Yaakov that Yosef's alive. Hashem didn't tell Yaakov that Yosef is alive, which means, from Hashem's perspective, Hashem did not want Yaakov to know Yosef is alive. So therefore, the ban still stood. Okay, because until Hashem undoes the ban is going to stay. So Yosef was halachically forced not to notify his father that he was alive. When the brothers came down and Yosef revealed himself to the brothers, that showed that Hashem undid the ban, and therefore the ban was dissolved. And now that's why Yosef says to the brothers in this week's Parsha, Maharu va'alu alavi. Hurry up. 22 years, another half a day, what's the big deal? Yosef said, no, now that I'm allowed to tell my father that I'm alive, because the ban was dissolved, because Hashem now wants me, Yaakov, to know that I'm alive. So Yosef said, he's suffering. I don't want him to suffer anymore. Quickly, Maharu, go. He told him, don't even learn on the way anything in depth. You get carried away. You'll be slowing the journey. Just go quickly as soon as possible and get Yaakov to come down to Egypt. So the reason is, Parsha, halachically, it wasn't that Yosef was a bad guy. Yosef was not allowed to tell his father. And you can imagine, and this shows the greatness of Yosef at Tzaddik. Yosef was very close with Yaakov. Elul told this Yaakov Yosef. Yaakov and whatever Yaakov knew, he told Yosef. Yosef and Yaakov were the same piece of dough. Okay? Yosef knew and was very close to his father. And he was dying to tell his father that he's alive. You can imagine his son loves his father and he knows the father is suffering for absolutely seemingly no reason because he's alive. Yet Yosef, the tzaddik that he was, says, I cannot mix in my personal feelings. I cannot mix even my father's feelings. If this is what Hashem wants, this is what needs to be done. And the lesson is a very powerful lesson for all of us. Sometimes we think, Torah says you're not allowed to do something. And somebody will think, but if I don't do it, I'll give a simple example. Torah says you're not allowed to eat not kosher. The Jew is not allowed to eat not kosher. So a guy says, but if I'm invited to my relative's house and they don't keep kosher, and if I don't eat the food, it's going to embarrass them and they're going to get angry and it's going to. So many people think, listen, you have to bend the rules a little bit and do what Hashem says you're not allowed to do. And this story teaches us no. If Hashem didn't want Yaakov to know, and therefore Yosef had no choice, and Yosef was not allowed to tell Yaakov that he's alive, but he didn't, because that's what Hashem wants. And the lesson is very simple. We can't put our own feelings or anybody else's feelings in front of what Hashem really wants us to do. And that's what Hashem wants. Okay, another interesting thing at the beginning of the Parsha, now we know that the Haftorah is connected to the Parsha. Because when we have our Torah, just let me give a little introduction to this. Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the Torah reading Shabbos, Monday, and Thursday. Shabbos afternoon, that we read at Mincha Shabbos, was instituted by Ezra at the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu make Torah reading Shabbos, Monday, and Thursday? Because in Chumash, after Kriyas Yamsuf, in Parshas B'Shalach, the pasuk says, "Vayetzu shleishes yomim b'midbar v'leimotzu mayim." They went 3 days in the desert and they didn't have water, and they started complaining. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Torah is likened to water. A Jew doesn't have Torah for 3 days, you start complaining. It's not good. It's not good for the Jew. So Moshe Rabbeinu instituted Torah reading Shabbos, Monday morning and Thursday morning. Why? Because then you don't have 3 days without Torah reading. Where does the Haftarah originate from? So Shulchan Aruch says this in the Gemara, that there was a decree against the Goyim, the Romans and the Greeks made a decree that the Jews are not allowed to read the Torah, punishable by death. So what did the Jews do? They couldn't read the Torah. So they found something in Navi, in the prophets, that we now call the Haftarah, similar to the Parsha, and they would read that instead of reading from the Torah. Then the Gemara says when that decree became nullified, they stopped reading the Haftorah and they went back to reading the Parsha. Then there was another decree, again, the same thing. And again, they stopped reading the Torah because it was punishable by death. And then they started reading the Haftarah. But then when the decree was nullified a second time, they kept reading of the Haftarah. So therefore, the Haftarahs that we read Shabbos after the Torah reading is connected to the Parsha. Now, what's the Haftarah Vayigash that's connected to our Parsha? So it's very simple. In our Parsha, it says, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, the beginning of the Parsha. There was a Jewish kid in danger, by the way, which is another lesson in itself. Binyamin was in danger. Yosef said, I'm sorry, he stole my goblet. I'm going to keep him. You guys can go up. Yehuda sees there's a Jewish kid in danger. He doesn't care that he's fighting the superpower of the world, Mitzrayim, which was the superpower of the world. Yehuda didn't care. Yehuda risked his life to save a Jewish child. But what does the pasuk say? Vayigash Elav Yehuda. That Yehuda went over to Yosef. Yehuda went over to Yosef. What is the Haftarah talking about? Also, take two sticks, one for Yehuda, one for Yosef. But over there, the Haftarah is saying that eventually Yosef is going to go to Yehuda. But that's the connection between the Parsha and the Haftarah. The Parsha is speaking about Yehuda, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda went over to Yosef, and the Haftarah speaks about Yosef going over to Yehuda. Let's take this in a much deeper, practical level, so to speak. There's two powers. There's Yehuda and there's Yosef. Okay, Yosef represents the 10 tribes, and Yehuda and Binyamin represents the other two, but it's Yehuda and Yosef. What is the difference between the Avodah of Yosef and the Avodah of Yehuda? What's the difference between their service of Hashem? So let's take the name itself. Yosef, like Rachel said when she named him, Yosef Hashem li bein achet. Yosef means Haisafa, adding. What does adding mean? That means in a natural way, learning, you'll get more knowledge, you get better midas. You add. How do you add in Torah mitzvahs? You learn more Torah, you add knowledge. You add more love and fear of Hashem, you add more emotions, you add more mitzvahs. That's what Yosef means. Yehuda, on the other hand, comes from, as the pasuk says, when Yehuda was called, Hapam Oida Has Hashem. Yehuda represents not only things, but made him anach loch subservience. Yehuda represents bittul. Yehuda represents Kabbalah's oil. Yehuda represents bittul, which means it's not in a way that you're adding more knowledge and more midas. Bittul means you do it because Hashem wants you to do it. Okay, similar to what we learned in Sukkot with Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, they poured wine on the Mizbeach. Wine represents Geshmak, it tastes good. Wine makes you happy. Wine is the most prominent drink. Mayim, that they poured on the Mizbeach during Sukkot, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, represents tasteless. Water represents Kabbalah's oil, acceptance of the yoke. Learning, davening, represents Yosef, Hisafa. Now, what's primary and what's secondary? What's the primary and what's secondary? In this world, Yehuda goes to Yosef. Vayigash Elav Yehuda. What does it mean Yehuda goes to Yosef? In this world, until the coming of Mashiach, the primary avodah is Yohavtas Hashem Elokecha, to learn more, to daven more, to get better midas, to become a better person, the level of Yosef. So therefore, Yosef is primary. Yehuda is coming over to Yosef. That represents secondary. In this world now, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, Yehuda is going to Yosef. Yosef is primary, meaning learning more, davening more, better midas, adding more. And Yehuda is secondary. Yehuda is coming over to Yosef. When Mashiach comes, who's going to be the king? As the pasuk says in the Haftarah, the Avdi David Nasi Aleim La'ilam. David HaMelech is going to be the Nasi. Over there, Yehuda is the Iker. Yehuda is the primary. Because when Mashiach comes and the essence of Hashem will be revealed in the world, Umala Aretz Deus Hashem, or Kulam Me'edoisi, all the great psukim that talk about what will be by coming a Mashiach and Chis HaMesim, over there, Bittul is primary. So over there, Yosef is coming to Yehuda because Bittul is primary and Yosef is secondary. And this explains another phenomenal difference between Yosef and Yehuda in the Beis HaMikdash versus the Mishkan. The primary Mishkan, the longest Mishkan was Mishkan Shilai. Over 300 years, the Mishkan, Rambam writes, over 300 years, okay, the Mishkan stood in Shilai. Whose part was Shilai? Which tribe was the Shilai? That was Yosef's tribe. Mishkan Shilai was in the Chelek of Yosef. Where is the Beis HaMikdash? Binyamin and Yehuda. That, again, the 10 tribes versus the 2 tribes. It's Yehuda and Binyamin. In fact, part of the Beis HaMikdash was in Yehuda, part of it was in Binyamin. So the Beis HaMikdash represents Yehuda versus the Mishkan that represents normal life, learning more, davening more, better midas, and all that. Now let's look at it this way. What was the Mishkan built from? You had the floor of the Mishkan, the Karka HaMishkan, inanimate dirt. The floor of the Mishkan was dirt. Okay? The walls were made out of Atzi Shitim, cedar trees, acacia wood, whichever way you define it. The covering of the Mishkan were goat skins. Now look at this way. Inanimate at the bottom, plant, the cedar trees, the acacia wood, and then goat skins, which is Daimeng Semeach Chai. And then you have the person working in the Mishkan. So the Mishkan, though, was built on a normal procedure, so to speak. The goat skin on top, which is Chai, animals. Then you have the boards of the Mishkan, which represent plant life. And then you have the dirt of the Mishkan, which represents inanimate. That's the normal rule, the normal way of life. That's the level of Yosef we discussed. What is Yosef? Heisafa, adding. It's not bittul. If you're bittul, then you're not becoming more, I was going to say more better. That sounds too yeshivish. You're not becoming better. You're not becoming more learned. You're not getting better midas. Yosef represents the normal life. In the normal life, the Mishkan, which is in the Chelek of Yosef, and in the Midbar, by the way, that is the way the world exists. Animals on top, then lower than that is plant, and then lower than that is the inanimate, the dirt. What was the Beis Hamikdash made from? All stone, all inanimate. There was no, you're not allowed to make anything out of wood in the Beis Hamikdash, in the wall of the Beis Hamikdash. It was all out of stone. What does stone represent? Stone represents inanimate. Inanimate represents lifeless, meaning there's no enjoyment, there's no understanding, there's no feelings. It's total bittul, complete bittul. So therefore, Yehuda, which represents bittul, that was where the Beis Hamikdash, where the ultimate Beis Hamikdash that will not get destroyed, is the third one, because Yehuda represents total bittul, and therefore the Beis Hamikdash was only made out of stone, inanimate, total bittul. The Mishkan was the level of Yosef. Again, the three levels: inanimate, plant, animal, with animal on top, and then plant, and then the earth. The way the world, the levels of the world. That's the level of Yosef. That's the level of Hisafa. So now, in this world, until we have the ultimate Beis Hamikdash that won't be destroyed, the real Beis Hamikdash, so to speak, that will be a permanent edifice that won't be destroyed, which makes it not really MS. So over here we have Yehuda going over to Yosef, because in this world, primary is a level of Yosef, like the Mishkan. La'asid Lave, like the Haftarah speaks about, when it will be eventually, La'asid Lave. So over there, you're talking about, like we said, the David Abdi Nasi Aleim La'olam, and as the pasuk says, and it's all going to be Yehuda. But David Abdi Nasi Lohem La'olam. All these things in Haftarah speak about La'asid Lavid. And therefore, it's very interesting. These are the two Avedas in serving Hashem. You have learning and davening, which is Yosef, and you have Yehuda, which is Bittul. So now the primary level is learning and davening, and doing mitzvahs, and growing in love of Hashem. Hisafa. And La'asid Lavid, the primary thing is going to be the level of Bittul. Okay, next. Finally, Yosef reveals himself to the brothers. He says, okay, guys, I need Yosef. They didn't believe him. He proved to them, he showed them that he had a bris, he was circumcised, he started speaking to them in Hebrew instead of in Egyptian that his son Gershon translated. Menashe. Menashe. The Menashe's son translated, Rashi says, because Menashe obviously spoke Hebrew and Egyptian. But now Yosef spoke to him, I'm speaking to you in Hebrew, and so on. Okay, so now Yosef says to the fathers, he said, will the third temple be built? Will the temple be built from the same materials that the first two temples were built? Or will they be different in a greater sense? I don't want to elaborate on this now. One opinion says the Beis Hamikdash is going to come down from heaven. Another opinion says Mashiach is going to build it. If Mashiach is building it, it's going to be the same materials that the first two were built from, but bigger and holier. And if Hashem is doing it, it's a whole different story. Yeah, anyway, so now Yosef says to the brothers, go up and come down, bring him down, right? I want to see him. So he says to the brothers, you should tell my whole glory that I did in Egypt, what I am, and how great it is, and I want you to come. So the pasuk says over here like this. Vayipol, and I mentioned this a lot of times. I want to tell you something. I heard this from the Rebbe many times. I taught it a million times. Every time I teach it, it brings out an unbelievable, it touches me in an unbelievable way, because this is what life is all about. Yosef cries even before they go back up to Yaakov. Okay, Yosef cries. It says he cried on the shoulders of Binyamin, his brother, and Binyamin cried on Yosef's shoulder. Okay, so Rashi says from the Medrash, why did Yosef cry on Binyamin's shoulders? Because Yosef foresaw there was going to be two temples, both Bati Mikdashes, and they're going to be destroyed. So Yosef cried on Binyamin's shoulders about the destruction of the two temples. Why did Binyamin cry on Yosef's shoulders? Rashi says, for the Mishkan that was going to be destroyed. The Mishkan, which was in Yosef's part, was going to be destroyed. Okay, so listen to this. Yosef is crying for Binyamin's destructions. Binyamin is crying for Yosef's destructions. So the Rebbe asks a very simple question. Why did they cry for their own destructions? Why are they crying for the other one's destruction? Yosef is crying for Binyamin, and Binyamin is crying for Yosef. Why didn't they cry for their own destruction? And this is a life lesson in an unbelievable way. God forbid, when a tragedy happens to somebody, whatever, they lose money, God forbid, a fire destroyed, they lose a loved one, okay? People cry. Crying really doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring the person back. It doesn't bring back the house that was on fire. It doesn't bring back the money that you lost. It doesn't bring back anything. Crying is a feeling. So the Rebbe explains like this. On my own destruction, it's forbidden for me to cry. You know why? Because God forbid, if there's a destruction in my life, Hashem says, don't sit there and kvetch and cry. Go rebuild. Don't cry. If God forbid something, the destruction happened, the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. But Yosef, Binyamin can't cry on his own destruction, because what's crying going to do? Nothing. Hashem says, don't cry on your own. This is what this Parsha is teaching us. Don't cry on your own destruction. Go and rebuild. On somebody else's destruction, they have to build their own destruction. I can't rebuild it for them. But I have to show feelings of love and being upset that they have this loss. But on your own destruction, it's forbidden to cry. Go build. How? You'll find a way to do it. I told many times the story with Rabbi Levitansky, Oliver Shulman's father. It was a Chicago family. Rabbi Levitansky's family lived a block away from my house in Chicago. He had a father whose name was Isaac Levitansky, but he was known as Ozzy Levitansky. He was a salesperson for diamonds, a jeweler, but they didn't have stores. They would travel. He would be traveling through the Midwest in all this Shtetlach and all these places, and he would sell diamonds, okay, and jewelry and things. One day he's driving in through a shtetl somewhere, a farm area, and he sees a whole bunch of people are sitting there and crying. A whole bunch of people are sitting there and crying. He stops the car. He says, "What's going on?" They said, "This guy's house just burned down, and we're very sorry. We feel sorry for him." So, Ozzy Levitansky, then you're talking about in the 40s or maybe the early 50s. He pulled out $10 from his pocket, and he said to the people standing there, "Here, I'm $10 sorry. How many dollars sorry are you?" One said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Do something about it." Don't fetch like a Jew does. Go build. And that's what the Rebbe is explaining over here. Yosef didn't cry on his own destruction because Yosef knew crying is not going to rebuild it. He has to go and rebuild it. Find out what caused the destruction and rebuild it. And Binyamin's destruction, that Yosef can't rebuild. Binyamin has to do that. So Yosef cried. The same thing Binyamin. Binyamin can't cry for Yosef's and his own destruction. He has to build. He can cry for Yosef's destruction. It's an unbelievable lesson, by the way, that the person that we need to learn. Okay. Another thing. So anyway, so Yosef sends the wagons. But if you look in the pasuk, really, Pari sent the wagons. Okay? Pari sent the wagons, and he says, go bring your father, and they can stay here, and we'll give him all the best things. We'll give him Geshin, and so on. Okay? So, the brothers told Yaakov, saying, listen to this. Oh, Yosef Chai. The brothers, by the way, it's an interesting medrash. The brothers didn't want to tell right away Yaakov that Yosef is alive. He'll get a heart attack, God forbid. So the famous Sarach Bas Asher, who played the violin, the brothers told her, before they got there into the house, they told her, why don't you play a song with the words Od Yosef Chai, that it should start, he should hear the words and he should get, a little bit used to it. The brothers came, and therefore Yaakov Avinu gave her bracha, she should live forever. Therefore, according to many opinions, Sarah Basasha never died, because Yaakov, when she told him that Yosef was alive, he gave her bracha that she should never die. Anyway, so what does it say over here? They told Yaakov, oh, Yosef Chai, Yosef is alive, and he's the ruler over the whole Egypt. So what does it say? Vayafak liba, his heart was beating strongly within him. He didn't believe him. Can you imagine? The brothers are telling Yaakov Yosef's alive and that he's a ruler in Egypt. And Yaakov says, sorry, kids, I don't believe you. So what happens? They told him all the words of Yosef. And then the pasuk says like this. He saw the wagons that Yosef carried, that Yosef sent. So the Mepharshim asked, and Rashi alludes to it also. The pasuk should have said the wagons that Pari sent. Yosef didn't send the wagons. The pasuk clearly says, Pari said, take wagons and bring your father. Why does it say over here the wagons that Yosef sent? So Rashi quotes in the Medrash that Yosef gave a sign to his father that he's alive. Why? 22 years earlier, when Yosef was sent by his father, when the brothers were grazing the sheep, and Yosef at the beginning of Parsha Vayigash, Yaakov said to him, go check out how the brothers are doing. And without any hesitation, Yosef went and told the brothers. So Yaakov and Yosef were learning a certain halacha. They were learning everything. Yaakov and Yosef were learning a whole day together. What halacha were they learning? The din was called Egla Arufa. At the end of Parshas Kiseitze, in the middle of Devarim, there's a din if you find a dead body outside the city and you don't know who killed it. So you have to measure to the closest city. And the elders of that city come and they say, our hands did not shed this blood. We did not shed this blood. And they have to chop off the head of a calf, and that area is now to be planted, a whole procedure. So Yosef, when he left his father, was learning that law of Egla Arufa. Egla and Agala is the same letters. So when Yosef sent the wagons that Pari told him to send, Yosef actually told the brothers, tell our father, I still remember what we were learning 22 years ago. And that's why the pasuk says, Rashi says, because Yosef reminded Pari. And then the pasuk says, "Vatchi roach Yaakov avinu." Then Yaakov became alive. He believed him. First of all, it changed over here. The brothers told him Yosef's alive and that he's a ruler in Egypt. He didn't believe them. All of a sudden, he showed him that, by the way, Yosef sent a message that I remember what I was learning. All of a sudden, he believed them. What? What's going on over here? Explanation is, again, an unbelievable explanation. Why is Yosef called Yosef of Tzaddik and not Reuven, Shimon, Levi? They're all tzaddikim. They were Shiftei Yudkei. They were the Shotim of Hashem. They were Bnei Yaakov. They were tzaddikim, super great tzaddikim. Why is only Yosef called Yosef of Tzaddik? So Chassidus explains there was a difference between the brothers and Yosef. What were the brothers? Shepherds. If you look in Chumash, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the Shvatim were shepherds. When the brothers came to Pare, they told Pare we're shepherds. They were shepherds, weren't lying, they were shepherds. Why was Yaakov Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Avraham Avinu, why were they shepherds? Because a shepherd is removed from world. He's removed from worldly affairs. He takes the sheep out to graze, the animals out to graze. He's in a field. There's no obstructions. There's no difficulties. There's no blockages from learning and davening and meditating. The others were secluded from world. Why were they secluded from world? Because the others didn't feel, and this was their avodah, they didn't feel that being in the world and not become affected by the world is impossible. Therefore, we're going to get ourselves up, so to speak. We're going to be shepherds. We're going to go out into the field. We're not going to be dealing with worldly politics and worldly businesses and worldly everything. And we're going to go graze sheep. Yosef, on the other hand, and that's why he's called Yosef of Tzaddik. Yosef was so great that he was able to be in world, and not only did world not affect him, he affected the Mitzrayim. He got him to do this. He brought godliness into Mitzrayim. The brothers are coming back, okay, and they say, Yaakov Avinu, Abba, Tata, whatever they called him. Yosef's alive and he rules in Egypt. Yosef said, Yaakov said, it can't be that Yosef is alive like Yosef should be, the spiritual level that Yosef should be in Mitzrayim. It's impossible to be. Because on Yaakov's level, it wasn't possible. The Shvatim's level, it wasn't possible. And that's why he's called Yaakov, Yosef Tzaddik. When the brothers showed him that in Mitzrayim, he had Egla Arufa, he remembered the laws of Egla Arufa, then Vatchi roach Yaakov avinu. But let's take it now even a bit step further. Why was he learning Egla Arufa? Simply the Mefarshim explain, because the whole reason why that dead body was found outside the city was because he didn't have an accompaniment. Like it says in there, they didn't accompany him outside of the city. That's why the elders were to blame. They said, we didn't shed his blood. Nobody thought that the elders did it. What was the issue? They didn't make sure the person had an accompaniment outside of the city. He didn't have food, whatever. Why was he learning Egla Arufa? So simply that's the reason, because Yaakov was sending Yosef on a dangerous journey. So he learned with him the laws about accompaniment on the journey. But taking it deeper is another issue over here. What is Yosef telling his father Yaakov? You taught me Egla Arufa when you sent me You sent me with material. You sent me that I wouldn't be ruined. I wouldn't get killed on the journey. That's where they're learning Eglah Rufa. But Yosef tells his father even more. Not only, in other words, he's telling Yaakov, listen what you gave me. Look what you instilled within me. Not only did I not die spiritually, did I not die from this dangerous Egypt, not only did I remain alive, but you gave me the ammunition and the food and the kedusha to influence the Egyptians. That's what he's telling Yaakov Avinu. And that's why they owes Eglah Rufa. Yosef is telling Yaakov Avinu, not only am I alive in Egypt, that Egypt didn't kill me spiritually, but not only that, I was the one that influenced the society. And that is what Yosef said. And then Vatchiruach Yaakov Avinu. Then Yaakov became alive. When he saw that not only did Yosef affect others, not get affected, but he affected others, then Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov saw Yosef was alive. By the way, the lesson of this, because now we're called Noye Katzain Yosef, we are the leadership of Yosef. Somebody could say, so what's the Aveda today in the world? Maybe a person should lock himself up in a ghetto. But now we're the Aveda of Yosef. Yosef gives every single Jew the koyach. When you follow Torah, Yosef gives every single Jew the strength and the ability and the possibility, so to speak, not only to not become affected from world, but on the contrary, we could affect the world. We have an impact on the world, not only we don't get affected. Because the Rebbe explains in many sichos, when a person is in an environment, one of two things must happen. Either they affect you or you affect them. If you are in an environment and none of the above happened, that means you're not in the environment. You might be there physically, but you're not there. You're not part of it. If you are part of a group, of a part of an establishment, part of a society, it's either they affect you or you affect them. Yosef is telling Yaakov Avinu, not only did you make sure that I didn't get hurt, but I am able to go out and influence the Egyptians. And then Yaakov became alive because Yaakov saw success story. He saw an unbelievable success story that Yosef was alive as a Yid. And that's what he wanted him to see. Okay, another thing in the Parsha, Yaakov. Did everybody get erased? One second.
No.
No,
No.
Oh, I'm back on. Okay.
everything is good.
Okay, I know what happened all of a sudden. The screen went blank. Okay. Now Yaakov's going down to Mitzrayim. What does he do? He says, he sends Yehuda to open a yeshiva. Okay. He says, Yehuda, I'm sending you to Mitzrayim. I'm not going to go to Egypt without a yeshiva. When the previous Rebbe came to America in 1940, he was there for 24 hours. When he came to live in America, the previous Rebbe said, I'm here in America 24 hours and there's still no yeshiva. So right away, they opened 770 with 10 bachrim. My father happened to be one of the 10. But there were mamish. The previous Rebbe said, I'm in America, there's no yeshiva. Yaakov said, I'm going to go down to Mitzrayim and expect with my whole nation of kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, and there's no yeshiva. So what did he do? The pasuk says he sent Yehuda. Laheris lefan of Geishna. Rashi says from the Medrash to establish a yeshiva. Very nice, very simple. Yeah. Stop to think for a second. It would have been more logical to text Yosef and say, Yosef, do me a favor. I want a yeshiva open before I get there. Number one, Yosef had the money for it. Yosef knew the language. Yosef knew the culture. Yosef knew everything about Mitzrayim. You want to open up a yeshiva in Mitzrayim? Why is he sending Yehuda? What does Yehuda know about opening yeshiva in Mitzrayim? It would have been more logical. Now that he sees Yosef is still learning Torah and he remembers what he would learn, Yaakov should have said, send a messenger to you, Yosef, open a yeshiva. Why is he sending Yehuda? So again, the explanation is very simple. Yosef, we said, yes, remained a tzaddik. But anyway you look at it, he was involved in the politics of the world. He was Mr. Egypt. Yaakov Avinu says, that's great for Yosef's level. But if I want to open a yeshiva, I don't want anybody involved in worldly things to open a yeshiva. I want a yeshiva opened by somebody who is only in the world of Torah. Yehuda, Bittul, Haidah, like we said. What is Yehuda represent? We mentioned before, the level of Bittul. Removal from world. Yaakov said, I want to open a yeshiva. Let me tell you something. Yes, Yosef has the know-how. Yosef has the money. Yosef has the language. Yosef has, but you know what? That's not what type of yeshiva I want to open. I want to open a yeshiva that Yehuda is going to open, and Levi will become the Rosh Yeshiva. As we know, Levi was the Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva in Egypt, because Levi was designated to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Mishkan. So Hashem wanted who should be involved in making this Mishkan, this yeshiva. It should be Yehuda, not Yosef. By the way, I didn't finish one point before, and I'm looking in the pasuk. I see the pasuk. I forgot to mention this before. Yosef cried for Binyamin. Binyamin cried for Yosef. On your own destructions, you don't die. Now, there's another thing that is very difficult to understand when you just take the pasuk. Okay, what happens? Okay, right after Yehuda is sent to open the yeshiva, it says like this. Yosef got his chariot ready. Yisrael Aviv Geshna. Yisrael, he went to meet Yisrael, Yaakov in Goshen. Vayera Elav, they appeared to each other. Vayipa al Tzavarav, Yosef cried on Yaakov's shoulders. Vayef al Tzavarav, and again Yosef cried on Yaakov's shoulders. Twice. So Rashi says, why didn't Yaakov cry on Yosef? Aval Yaakov le'nofal tzaveri v'le'noshku. Why not? Amar Rabbeinu, he was reading the Shema. Listen to this. The father does, I'm thinking they're going to say it simply and then show how it doesn't make sense. Yosef, Yaakov, didn't see his son for 22 years. Yeah. They didn't drop down with a parachute from the head, from the plane. Okay. They're coming from opposite directions. Okay. Yosef went with a whole bunch of soldiers, obviously. Yaakov came with 70 of his descendants. There was a crowd coming. Yeah. Yosef's coming in from one direction. Yaakov's coming from another direction. Yeah. So when they finally meet, Yosef is hugging Yaakov and kissing him, and Yaakov is busy reading the Shema. I mean, come on. How long does it take to read Shema? Even if he did it 10 minutes. But he saw him about an hour, probably a half an hour coming in the trip. Why did Yaakov read Shema then? He had to read the Shema. Read Shema earlier. And then when your son comes after 22 years, give him a hug and a kiss. The story just doesn't make sense, even simply. Yaakov couldn't do the Shema earlier. But again, this is the explanation. Yosef, Rashi says, and the Medrash says it even where Rashi doesn't say it here, but the Medrash says, Yosef cried on Yaakov's shoulders again and again for all the eventual destructions and sorrows that the Jews are going to have. all the future generations of destruction and problems and sorrows and so on. Yaakov Avinu, though, as the father of Klal Yisrael, Yaakov Avinu can't cry for the destruction of the Jewish people. He is the father of the Jewish people. Yaakov needs to go and build. And that's what reading the Shema is. The Gemara says, whoever reads Shema in your bed, but it means anytime you read the Shema, it's like you're holding a double-edged sword, killing out all the evil forces. So the Gemara says, when somebody is reading the Shema, it's like killing all the evil forces. It's not a question of Shema meeting them earlier or later. There's a meeting here between Yosef and Yaakov, the future of all Klal Yisrael. Ner Katzen Yosef. Yosef is the leader of the Jewish people. Yaakov Avinu is the father of the whole Jewish nation. Yaakov and Yosef are meeting. It's not only about the physical meet between father and son that didn't see each other for 22 years. These are people on a higher level. It's a different category of people. They're crying because of all the eventual tzadis that's going to come out of the Jews going down to Mitzrayim, which is the origin of all the Golus. What's the origin of all exiles? Going down to Egypt. Yaakov and Yosef now, Yaakov's coming down to Egypt. He's taking the Jewish nation, the 70 souls, into the land of Mitzrayim with Golus. They knew there's going to be problems. They foresaw Ruach HaKodesh prophecy. They foresaw all the generations. And they're realizing there's a lot of problems here. So Yosef, who is not the father of Klal Yisrael, he cries again and again. He cried again on the shoulders. Yaakov, on the other hand, says, let me tell you what you need to do. You have a problem. There's tzadus happening in Klal Yisrael. Don't kvetch. So bad. Do something about it. Read Shema. Kill the evil forces. That's what Yaakov is teaching us. That's what the Torah is teaching us in the story. These are remarkable lessons in life. On your own destruction, you don't cry, go build. Yaakov Avinu represented Klal Yisrael. He's not going to cry. He's going to go build by reading the Shema and the concept of Shema. Okay. Another interesting thing over here is it says in the Zohar that in this week's Parsha, it says that Yosef told the Egyptians later on in the Parsha, okay? And it says all the money finished, and they came to Yosef and they said, we're all dying. Why should we die? So Yosef said to them, Hey lochem zara, here's seed, plant it, and it's going to grow, because the Medrash says that when Yaakov Avinu came down, the hunger stopped. So the hunger really didn't last for 7 years. It was supposed to last for 7 years. But it only lasted 2 years because when Yaakov Avinu came down, the hunger stopped. Okay? So now, he said, Hey lochem zera, here, plant the seed. Okay? Hey lochem zera zatim so adam. What did Yosef do? The Rashi quotes this. When the people came to Yosef for food, you know what Yosef said to them? And this is kindness to his brothers. Rashi says, when the people came to Yosef, you know what he told them to do? Go circumcise yourself. Here. Okay, Yosef moved around the brother. Then it says like this. Yosef made them all do a bris. So they came complaining to Pari, the Medrash says. So Pari says, listen, without him, you're going to die anyway. So you might as well do it. So Yosef got all the Egyptians to do a bris. why Rashi says that the brothers shouldn't be embarrassed. Okay. Now, in Zayar it says that Joseph did something bad with this. Why? By getting the Egyptians to do a bris, he brought Kedusha into Egypt that Hashem really didn't want. And one second, is this the Arizal? Yeah, the Arizal, not the Zayar. The Arizal writes that they were punished. The same thing when Moshe Rabbeinu took the aid of Rav, the tag-along Egyptians. There was one opinion says double the size of the Jews. Okay? So Moshe Rabbeinu took the aid of Rav, the Egyptian tag-alongs with the Jews. Hashem didn't like it. Therefore, when they initiated the golden calf, the eagle, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Kishiches amcha asher yitzei Eretz Mitzrayim." Your nation that you took out of Egypt, because you were taking out the aid of Rav. You took out the aid of Rav. I didn't tell you to do it. You did it. You were arguing with me. So that Arizal writes that both Yosef, who brought Kedusha into Egypt, and Moshe Rabbeinu, who took out the aid of Rav from Egypt, they did a sin because they brought Kedusha into Egypt, and it wasn't supposed to happen. Again, what's the lesson with this? Moshe Rabbeinu and Yosef Tzaddik, you can't get greater than that. And they thought in the world of Kedusha, in the world of holiness, they thought, you know what? This is the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to get the Egyptians to become part of Kal Yisrael. Give them a bris in Yosef's time, in Moshe Rabbeinu's time, make the aid of Rav out of Egypt. What is the lesson for this? They say in English, the expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Hashem was upset with Moshe Rabbeinu and Yosef. He said, you have a great idea. But you know what? No, I didn't tell you to do it. And if I don't tell you to do it, you don't do it. No matter how great you think you are, and you think this is the right way of doing things, but the problem is, but that's not what Hashem says. And that's not what Hashem wanted. And if you're going against Hashem, even with your seichel of Torah, your seichel of Kedusha, the Gemara tells, there was a chochem in the Gemara that was able to purify a dead bug with 150 Torah reasons why a bug was able to be pure. But you know what the problem is? The Torah says it's tamei, it's impure. You think you could do something good. If Torah says don't do it, you don't do it. And this we find a very interesting lesson. Many people think, I have to be closer to Yiddishkeit, I'm going to get them, it's beneficial, it's good, let me get them. And you do paths that the Torah is not telling us to do. The Torah tells us greater people than you did that wrong. Greater Yosef thought he's going to get Kedusha in Mitzrayim, he'll refine Egyptians. Moshe Rabbeinu says, they want to become Jewish, they want to accept the Torah, great. What could be better than that? Hashem says to him, Vaychik, you know what? That's not what I told you to do. I tell you, like the Rebbe always says, it says in Pirkei Avos, you should be the disciples of Aaron. Hashem says, you bring them to Torah, not Torah to them. And this is a very important lesson in life. Anyway, time's up. We'll see you Mitzvah Hashem Wednesday night. We're going to do halacha and a farbrengen in honor of Hey Tavis. So everybody's invited. Have a very good week and welcome back. And hopefully now the classes will be on a more regular basis. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Rabbi.
you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.